moderator for this event. For those of you who are tuning into Millie for the very first time, Millie is a company dedicated to building a global community for international school students. And to that end, we host webinars and panels like this every weekend. You can find an archive for all our past events, as well as a schedule for future events on our website at www.milliegroup.com. If you want to keep up to date with what we have to offer, follow us on Instagram at Millie_group. So here's how today's panel is going to look. We have some pre-prepared questions, but you can always submit your questions. For the first 45 minutes or so, we'll go through the pre-prepared questions. After that, we'll let our panelists answer your questions. Your questions can be general for everyone, or you can direct them at a specific panelist. Either is fine. All right, so let's get started then. Could each panelist please introduce yourself? Please tell us your name, the city you're currently in and are from, your job role and where you work, and one fun fact about yourself.
Yeah, hi, my name is Guillermo Quintero, but I go by Guy. I'm an associate producer at IMG, working for Apple TV's coverage of the MLS, Major League Soccer. I'm based in New York City, and I've been working in this role for 8 months now. My previous experience includes working for other production houses or studios like NBC Sports, mostly covering soccer.
All right. Hi, my name is Vishnu. I am a screenwriter, a filmmaker, and an educator. I am based out of Princeton, New Jersey, but I work in New York. And for the past, I think, for the year actually, I'm working with like a bunch of sort of companies. I specifically work in between India and New York. So I work with production companies that are based in Bombay. I work at Columbia University as an educator, and I also work for an LA-based production company called Golden TV. A fun fact about myself, my family had a pet elephant growing up. This is not a stereotype that applies to other families in India, but it's to do with the fact that my family was like agrarian, so we did have a lot of animals around. Yeah.
Awesome. Let's begin with the questions. I see Rim is trying to join us, but I don't think she's right here right now. So we'll just begin with the questions, and when she joins in, we'll introduce her. First question: what inspired you to pursue a career in television and film, and how did you get started in the industry?
Yeah, for me, it was my father. My father worked as a producer and works as a producer still in TV in Venezuela. So he and the US. So I grew up with that influence my whole life. I knew that I wanted to go into the industry, but didn't know exactly how. I went to study business at school, and at school I kind of was focused more on the business stuff, on finance, different jobs, different industries, and then eventually I realized that, I wanted to work in a field that I was passionate about, and that was TV. So, TV and maybe movies. So I started looking elsewhere. I got some internships through cool programs in the US to work at Disney and other companies, and then eventually landed at NBC Sports post-graduation. And that was like my start, I guess you could say, in the industry. And then from there, I'm only 23, so it's only been a year and a half since graduation. So I've had 2 jobs total. And now like I said, I'm an associate producer at Apple TV, IMG, working for Apple TV. And yeah, that's how I got my start. And I think it's really passion driven and driven with that desire to enjoy what I do on a daily basis. So.
I started out in theater, actually. I started out as an actor. I had no sort of consideration of being behind the scenes, but I got really interested in why I was being asked to do what I was being asked to do by directors and writers, so to speak. And I think that sort of, I took a leap into writing and then got a job at a film production company and then sort of started directing my own films and writing my own films and decided that I needed to obviously get more in depth with the craft. And I came here to do my master's at Columbia in screenwriting and directing. I graduated this year in February, and I, and basically gained experience very quickly after that. Like I was in the program when I got hired to write for TV and write for a Netflix original TV show that's going to release at the end of this year. And so I sort of jumped out of the program very quickly already having like a foothold in television and working in independent film. So that's how it began. It began from acting, but it's gone to a different place altogether.
Thank you so much for that. Reem, thank you so much for joining us. Could you please just shortly introduce yourself, tell us your name, the city you're currently in and are from, your job role and where you work, and one fun fact about yourself?
Yeah, of course. My name is Reem Naseem, as you all know. Nice to meet you all. I am currently in UK, Manchester. I work as a television production assistant at McCann Manchester, which is like a creative advertising agency. So we produce a lot of ads for brands like Pure Gym, Aldi UK, L'Oreal, Meta, and stuff like that. And I am originally from India. And fun fact about me is I obviously love films a lot. Anything visual, anything films and documentary, that's one of my favorite things to watch and do. And yeah, that's a brief introduction about myself.
Awesome, thank you. So moving on to the first question, if you could just answer really quickly, what inspired you to pursue a career in television and film, and how did you get started in the industry?
Yeah, of course. So again, growing up, I was always interested in watching a lot of films or anything visual, even advertisements. So I kind of always knew that I had an interest towards that field. And then it slowly transcended into me taking a lot of photos. Like I got into photography and I was like the little creative kid in the house that does like videos and stuff like that. So when I watch stuff on TV or films, I used to always be curious as to how they produce it. Like, how is that shot being made? Or, how did they do that? Like, I was very much into the storytelling and on, the backgrounds of how a film comes into being like on air. So I was very inspired by a lot of TV shows and films, and I always knew that this is the industry that I wanted to go into. So I decided to do an undergraduate degree in visual communication. That was my very first introduction into like a world full of creative people, and from then on, I was sure that this is what I want to do for the rest of my career. And then I also did a master's degree in the UK where I again met a lot of like-minded people and I was introduced to this whole world of production, TV production, digital production, advertising production. So that was how I had my official entry into the industry. Thank you, Augusta, for asking me that.
Thank you for that. Can you share a moment in your career that taught you a valuable lesson about working in this field? Moving on over to Guillermo.
Yeah, definitely. I would say when I worked at NBC on the Premier League obviously being an English British sports league, I worked every weekend from 5 a.m. to 2 p.m., 3 p.m., and just having to wake up early on Saturday and Sundays for so long. It was total of like 9 months. It wasn't easy, and I think having to do that and dedicating myself to that was sort of a eye-opening in terms of like what it could mean to work in the creative industry and in entertainment. Because I think from the outside you might think it's, you know, mostly flashiness and all these fun things, but in reality it can be very grueling and intense. And although it was fun to work, it was definitely a long experience, and that was pretty eye-opening, and that gave me a good sense of what it means and what it requires from people to really commit themselves. And I bought into that mentality, and that was very, I guess you can say, like you said, like eye-opening in terms of what it means to work in TV. So yeah, that's my answer for that question.
Well, when we used to do theater specifically, you would spend a lot of time around creative people. And theater is like way more relaxed than television and film because there is sort of like a ticking clock, and you're always sort of reminded of time is money, which isn't sort of the case in theater, and things are very relaxed. You really form a family with people, and that's so many of my values sort of come from that space because I began there, and I wanted to sort of bring that into TV and film, only to find out that, I mean, things can be pretty stressful. I mean, there are lots of stressful work environments in television and film, and you are made to think early on, I think, in your career that this is how it can solely function. But I think that what I've learned over the course of like continuing to stick it out is that if you find the right people, and if you strive to sort of create an atmosphere of congeniality and like enjoyment, you can actually work with people really well around stresses that are related to time and money, and end up creating like lovely, beautiful work that you're proud of. So that's sort of what my valuable lesson has been in the field?
Mine would again be very similar to the others. I think I worked on this reality TV show called MTV Teen Moms UK, and we had long working hours. And that's when I realized the importance of teamwork. A production or a good TV show comes, or a good TV show, or a good product or film always comes out of really great teamwork. And I think one of the core things, if you're passionate about this industry, you need to realize is teamwork is everything. And I learned that when you work long hours and do a lot of hard work, there comes a time where a lot of conflicts arises. So you have to kind of work together as a team to resolve it, and also like be mindful of each other. Like everybody's working long hours, there must be conflicts. So that, yeah, is one of the important, valuable things that I learned about teamwork in my production.
Staying on the theme of valuable lessons, what skills do you think are most important for someone looking to succeed in television and film? And how do you develop those skills?
Yeah, good question. I would say to bounce off Reem's answer, teamwork is paramount. I think when you're working, like she said, I mean, I hate to repeat the answer, but working with intense projects and long hours, being part of a team is the most important part. And in TV, it's never a solo job. I mean, when you're working on a broadcast, which is what I do, you're working with different facets. It's like a big machine, and you have to make sure that um you know that and are comfortable with that and can work well with other people and are able to teach people certain things if you have to, or be open to feedback from people if they're above you and more experienced. So it's kind of like being able to balance working with different levels of people at all times. And then also I think dedication is huge working in TV, and knowing that sometimes maybe it's just about what you're doing and loving what you're doing and really dedicating yourself to it, because it can be, like I said before, it can be long hours, it can be intense, and I think being able to look past all of that and just be happy with what you're doing and being satisfied and passionate about it is the most important thing. So those two I think go hand in hand, and if you have those two, I think it's a good combo for success in TV and film, I'm sure.
Oh, that's such a good answer. I would say the two sort of skills are sort of interconnected, but I would say grit and discipline. I think I come from the sort of independent side of things where like I worked as a writer director, where it's like you don't necessarily know what project you're going to land or where like the next paycheck is going to come from. So, and you have to develop like a system for your craft and make sure that you're buying time from your money, essentially. And a lot of that can essentially come from understanding that TV and film are like careers in which, like my friends would say, you play the long game. You need to essentially harden yourself to the understanding that you do not know where things pop up and when opportunities come up. And you need to be in it, having developed rituals and orders and practices that make you focus on the craft. Like you get at your desk and you work like those 5 hours or 6 hours that you need to get your writing done, or you sit with a project that you don't know if it's going to get made necessarily, but like you work on it to make sure that it's closer to their production or completion. And that requires sort of like discipline. Like it's like winning the war between the temples. I think that's like it's truly winning the war here that I think is important for people who want to get into this industry.
My answer to that would be I'd say you need to have a lot of passion. Like you kind of, the kind of work I do, you kind of really need to have the drive to go forward and like have the passion, the creativity, the will to do more, like be a little proactive and stuff, especially if you're working within a production team. Uh, Again, like I said, be nice to people, be friendly and kind to each other, and always kind of have this positive attitude as well. Like, it's not always easy executing the ideas in a production. So you always need to have a little positive outtake. Like you need to be positive about, yes, it can be done. This can be made. Let's do it. Let's get this done. And that sort of mentality is very important. And again, like I said, I think for me, what helped the most is having passion. Like I really love the industry that I work in, and I I am ready to work long hours. I'm ready to hard work and do whatever it takes to make my production a success. So yeah, I'd say that's my answer.
Now, networking is a big important factor into any sort of career, any sort of profession, but I can't imagine how much more it is in the particular in television and film. How do you approach networking in the industry, and what sort of tips do you have for building meaningful connections?
Yeah, I think the most important thing when networking is first to be yourself at all times and never try to be somebody you're not with people, because often when you're working in any industry, you're working with people who are, high up and have a lot of pedigree, and I think people may try to act a certain way to impress those individuals, but in reality, I think the most important thing is to be yourself and to just always show who you are, and that can help you foster meaningful connections and then make more from them. I think that's the first thing, and then second, I think is not being afraid to reach out to anybody at any level. I think that's the most important thing is people like to help. People were once in our shoes or your shoes, so they know what it's like to be an intern, a PA, AP, whatever it may be. And I think they want to help, and knowing that and being comfortable reaching out is important. Once at Disney, I got to be on a call with Adam Bergman, who's, a very high up I think COO or part of the studios, and that was a really cool experience to be able to ask him a question, and he was happy to answer it. So that kind of stuff. Obviously, he's not part of my network per se, but just being able to ask questions and ask and not be afraid to be in those rooms and conversations is a very important thing that can help you then build a network naturally and not do it in a forced manner. I think doing it naturally is the most important thing too. So yeah.
No, I completely agree with that. I think there's a lot of conversation that continues to happen about networking being some sort of like ethereal concept, but I think that one of the basic things to network is essentially to be a decent, kind person who is trying to connect with people. Because any sort of connection that isn't organic or isn't genuine isn't going to pay off for you in any way. And I think if you walk into a connection with the intention of wanting it to materially pay off for you, then you aren't really there for the human being. And I think that's the most important thing. I think the second most important thing is that I heard somebody on the internet say this, and I found that so funny. That you can't network with Steven Spielberg because Steven Spielberg doesn't have time for you. Like, I think the important thing to remember is that you network parallelly. You network with people who are within sort of your quote unquote bracket or class. You don't network above. And you're trying to figure out who your people are who are at your level in the industry and where they want to rise, and you rise with them. So you support each other to rise upwards, as opposed to trying to seek help from above. And that's like more prudent and more realistic, and actually truly what's going to be helpful for you to do actionably. So those are my two kind of points.
I think networking to an extent has helped me very much in this industry because, like I said before, I'm from India and I came to UK to pursue a career in this industry. And we used to have networking events, just one or two networking events per year. And I used to go to all of them and talk to the people. Not everybody would, you reach out to certain people, but not everybody would respond. But at least some of them would. And just, casually just networking, even with your mentors, you can get your mentor's email ID or check with your mentors if there's any opportunity or anyone they know. Or what I used to do, well, I'm a little too ambitious. So I kind of, if I like a show or TV show or something like that, I used to go onto the credits and check their name out on LinkedIn and stuff like that and kind of message them. Maybe too ambitious, but it's worth a try. So yeah, I'd say network, connect with people, very, very important in the industry. If you need to go ahead, you need to have contacts and references and really let people know that you exist and you're ready to take up certain roles and that you really want to do it. So yeah, I'd say go for it. Networking is 100% effective method.
You guys have also mentioned moving back into the topics about the difficulties of being in the field. You guys had mentioned about the long hours and having conflict, stuff like that. Are there any sort of other challenges that you face in your career, and how did you overcome it? Could be unique experiences or other things that you think may be useful to the viewers.
Yeah, I mean, I think to not be repetitive, but I'm gonna have to be. I think when I was working at NBC, it was a long period of time where I was working those intense hours, and I liked the job. The people were great, but I knew that long term. I couldn't do that for 5, 6, 7 years. So I ended up looking for jobs elsewhere and then got lucky enough to find my current job now. And I think the lesson there is really to, even though you're in a great place and like different things, don't be afraid to change and to look for something else, even if it means, giving up what's currently pretty good and like having to take that risk. And I think that was not easy. I think in today's world, getting a new job is not the easiest thing. So that's something that I don't want to say is like the obvious answer every time, but I do think that when an opportunity is available to you, it's important to be able to take that risk and be able to go forward and change. And that's what happened back then. And yeah.
That's actually a very good question. I would say that there are sort of, I think that when you're younger, you want to develop your craft and you want to be good at what you want to do. And that requires time and that requires money. And sort of striking the balance between doing things for money and doing things for love, what you're passionate about, is crucial. And I think that requires sort of like grounded understanding of what are your specific circumstances. What do you need to do to make sure you have time to work on your craft, and how do you essentially do that? That's something that I faced very early on, where I worked at a film production company in India, and the hours were very long. We had to do a lot of work, but I wasn't finding any time to do my work because I knew that I didn't want to be there long term. Like I didn't want to work in advertising long term. I wanted to work in TV and film, and sort of just carving my own space within that, knowing this is how much I can give to this place emotionally and this work, because it gives me money so that I can devote my time to my craft, which is truly the long game. Having an understanding of that, grappling with that, like very early on, I would say, like just like when I was 20 years old, was very, very important.
I think one of the biggest challenges that I faced is actually making a start in the industry. It's not easy to get a job or like any sort of roles within the industry. Like you really have to, I mean, personally, that's my experience. I had to kind of work a lot, like to just get a job as a runner. Not everybody they always ask you for experience, even though if it's just a runner job, and it's not easy for somebody who's just entering into, especially someone coming from India, to get an opportunity in the UK with no actual experience in the UK was very tough for me. So that was one of my biggest challenges, just getting myself out there. But how I did was, like I said, was through university and my mentors and my professors and just networking and just trying really hard, really, just, reaching out to people, looking for opportunities constantly. And when something lands, like Guillermo said, when something lands, you have to be smart enough to take the opportunity, even though if it may not be something you're looking for, but just to get the start, just to get an experience, I think you should just grab the opportunity in whatever field that you get within the industry.
Now, you've all mentioned about how much of a group effort it is to be in such a field, What advice do you have for someone looking to choose between different roles? Now, with that, I can imagine there's a lot of different roles in the industry. What advice do you have for someone trying to choose between different roles in television and film industry? How do you go about finding your own passion or where you belong in the industry?
Yeah, it's a tough question, I think. I think it's not easy to answer that because most of us are just doing, I think, what we like, but also what the best opportunity was for us on the get-go. And I think it'd be ideal to be able to try everything and be able to know, okay, I'm good at this or I like this more and this less. But I think what to echo previous points by most of us or all of us, it's you know, doing whatever opportunity is available to you and then doing that well and learning from that and then trying to be open to more things. And you know I think once you're in the industry, you're in the world, and you can just sort of bounce around there and hopefully, grow as you go along. But I think the most important thing is getting in, and then once you're in, it's experiencing different things and seeing what the best thing is for you over a course of time. And it's not an easy thing. And I would say also separately is back to networking, it's talking to people and learning about others' experiences and what they do and what they don't do, and putting yourself in their shoes mentally and seeing, okay, would I like to do that job? Would I hate that job? And then from there, being able to make your own decision based on that, maybe what you apply to, and then after that, you can see once you're in where you would pivot to. But that's yeah, that's what I would say.
That's actually, I completely agree. I do think sort of being in it is a task in and of itself, and that's sort of very important. You should take, especially when you're starting out, you should take an opportunity that comes along your way and figure out where you fit in the system after. But once I think you're there, I think once you're inside, I think it's important to figure out for yourself which role makes it feel like which role makes it feel to you like you are making the movie happen. I think that everybody in every department feels like without them the movie would not happen, and they're connected solely specifically to that department for that specific reason. I've met directors who are like, without me this movie would not be this movie, producers who are like, without me there would be nobody here, writers who are like, without me you wouldn't be knowing what to say, actors who are like, if you didn't do this movie wouldn't necessarily happen, editors feel like they made the movie entirely on their own. So it's like all of them clearly are working together, but like when you are in a specific department where you feel like, without me this movie wouldn't get made, I think that's truly where you want to land. I think figuring that out is sort of the first step after being inside, and then gravitating towards that by networking, by figuring out what are the skill sets that you need to build to be in that specific role. Because it's, again, a long game. And once you do that, I think slowly and surely, eventually, you will be in that role.
I think well, for me, how it worked was I started off as a runner, and which gave me a lot of opportunity to explore a lot of departments within a production. Like, I would talk to the creative people, I would talk to the production side, and I would also talk to like the behind the scenes, like the camera department, because I wanted to get more insight into what each department functions, and I kind of wanted to decide and pick which one would best suit me. So I used to, because I started off as runner and on a junior level, I kind of got a lot of insight into how other departments function. And so it's very important to know what you really want, like the others mentioned, like where your true calling is. It may not be, maybe you wanted to be a director, but you think you would perform better as a producer, which is what I think worked for me. I thought I was always a creative, but once I started working as a producer, I realized, oh, I'm damn good at it. Like, I'm quite organizational. I can do all the post-production, pre-production work. I can communicate effectively with the rest of the department. And I realized that production is what I am good at. And I stuck onto it solely because I got an opportunity to explore and know what other departments are like and speak to other people of that department. So I'd say my biggest advice is kind of research on what or how other departments function, and kind of maybe like have a little bit of experience a little bit all over the place, and then you will eventually figure out what you like and what you're truly passionate about. So yeah, that's my answer.
How do you stay creative and motivated in a field that can sometimes be very demanding or competitive?
Yeah, I think, working in broadcasting, you often have seconds to make decisions on creative aspects, and it can be really hard to think creatively when you're pressed against time. But I do think the important part is to always, I think I try to at least always think, okay, is this something that I can be proud of if it goes on air and it goes on TV? And is this something that's the right thing or just the rushed thing that I'm doing just to get it done? And yeah, the most important thing is being able to, take a step back sometimes, even when you're facing pressure and time constraints, and think, okay, is this really my best work, and can I improve this, right? And or maybe when you're actually making it, you're taking a step back as well then, and not after the fact, and doing things slowly, and that can really help you make good stuff even when the time is against you. And I think that's the most important thing, is being able to stay level-headed and collected, which is, pretty hard sometimes, I'll admit, but being able to do that and deliver a good product and a good content is super important and not easy to do. So yeah, just taking a deep breath.
Oh, I would say taking breaks and also sort of like stepping away from a project. I think I'm most creative. I think I'm least creative when I'm forcing something to happen specifically with any given project, and sort of having multiple plates in the air, or having like things that you're working on consecutively and shifting away from one project to the next. taking time generally for yourself as a human being. I mean, this is an industry with sort of hours that can be grueling, especially when you're starting out. You don't really get to set them. But like you do get to set boundaries specifically about like how you want your Sundays to function, or when you want to start your work brain and when you shut your work brain. And I think people sometimes forget that. I know, Lord knows I have many, many times. And I think just having a grasp on my own sort of mental health, and when a project feels like it's not budging and I need to try something else, stepping away from it, shifting to another project, returning to it with fresh eyes, seeking help from people, specifically other creative people, having a robust network that you build off other creatives and getting their eyes on something that you're struggling with. Seeking motivation from them, just like speaking to them, seeing how they're doing in their lives, can also just like make you feel less alone in the process, at least me personally. Um, those are the things that I do and I continue to do to stay creative and motivated.
So both great answers from Guillermo and Vishnu. Like I just want to add on to it and not repeat it. So like they said, take breaks, be level-headed. But I think for me, what also helps is just like watching stuff, just watching different types of TV shows and films or documentaries, and just being inspired, and to be creative and see different ideas out there, like what others are producing, what others are directing. I think that's really helped me stay creative and motivated. So yeah, I'm just adding on to what Vishen and Game already had to say. That's it.
Now, there's been a mention of looking at other creative or other sources for inspiration and so forth. Does that ever lead to any sort of like imposter syndrome or any sort of doubt in oneself on your own ability to be creative? And what's been your experience of imposter syndrome in the industry?
Yeah, for sure. I think we all experience that at some point, 100%. I think, especially at a young age when you're being thrown to do things that, um, do things that you don't think, or your experience really doesn't really back being put in that role, and people are taking chances on you and taking risks on you. I think that can definitely bring about imposter syndrome. But oftentimes, I think what matters most is just always, just being confident and never too confident, never overconfident. I think just being able to, trust yourself and know that you're there for a reason once you're in there, and know that people are trusting you with certain roles and tasks because they believe you can do it, and not because you're just being gifted things, and that's not the way the world actually works. So, it's just, again, back to being level-headed, being confident, and knowing that whatever you decide in a given moment, whether you're in charge of a project or a team, whatever it may be, you know, I think what I always go by is, as long as I can explain why I do something, I think that's the most important thing. And maybe it's wrong in people's eyes, because I think TV and film can be very subjective. So things that you may think are correct, somebody else may think is horrible. So just being able to back yourself up and why you did something, and as long as it's not like an actual mistake that wasn't supposed to go on air. I'm speaking obviously in a broadcasting sense. Um, I think that's the most important thing, and being able to just put that aside. And when you're in the moment, it's so hectic and so fast paced that I think those thoughts have to go to the back of your mind. You can't think about them, because if you do, then you're not gonna do well. So I think it's really about being able to stay level-headed and make sensible decisions. That makes sense.
All the time. I think I experience imposter syndrome all the time. I experienced imposter syndrome when I was like, oh, should I do this panel? Like, what will I talk about? And my friends were like, oh no, you have so much to talk about. You actually have a career in TV film, you could talk about it. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. So I mean, I think the lesson from this, specifically for me, is that I trust my brain. I don't trust my brain all the time, like, and I talk back to it. Because I do think that it is prone to feeling anxious in situations that are unfamiliar, but like unfamiliar situations have led to like tremendous growth for me. So developing sort of like a talk back to my mind about like, no, I'm here and I'm going to do this, and if I make mistakes, that's okay. Or like something along those lines for any situation that I find myself in where I feel like my brain is talking back to me and making me feel like an imposter, is a ritual or a practice that has helped me enormously.
So I think it's very natural in any career to feel like you're not doing enough, or like not give yourself enough credit. I think my answer to that is just know and understand that you are where you are because of your hard work, and you kind of deserve to be here. And you could get the best of yourself, but I think you just have to give yourself credit, and like what Gemma said, be confident. Like, understand that you deserve it and you deserve to be here. You've worked hard enough to get here. So yeah, that's a simple answer from me.
What role do you believe? Now, we've talked a little bit about just network and all of that, but what role do you believe mentorship plays in career development, and how can students seek out mentors, or what has been your experience with mentors?
Yeah, I think it's huge, especially considering imposter syndrome and what that could look like. Um, I think for myself at least, I'm from Venezuela, so I have a coworker who's from Venezuela and a lot older. So working with him and forming that bond with him has been huge for me in the past 8 months to kind of be inspired and feel like, I belong in this space. Especially like in being in the US, most people, are American and not from my background. So that really inspires me to, feel like I belong. And I think similarly, just having someone to go to for anything that you feel is relevant within your relationship with them and asking questions and just being able to almost use their experiences to help guide you and go to them for feedback and other things and feeling comfortable with that is really important because you can have a boss that is, a good boss, but also not someone who you are really that kind of mentor dynamic with, and that can be harder to approach and harder to ask questions and feel comfortable. So having someone like that is really important so you can kind of just be yourself and be normal sometimes and just ask questions and feel like, okay, I feel this way, I feel nervous about this, I feel excited about this, how can you help me with this? And like that's really a big way and a very important way, I think, um to grow and um to find yourself in an industry and to really, go forward. So yeah.
I think that I would be nowhere without mentors in my life. And they've been sort of with me from theater, from like when I worked at an advertising agency, when I came here, my advisor at Columbia, my professor at Columbia, um, and the head writer for the Netflix show that I worked on, like hugely important. And I'm so, so grateful that I got them. I think mentors have been so useful for me specifically because they're it's connected something that we spoke about earlier because they keep me sort of. Reem was talking about like she likes to watch things that feel creative and motivated, and I definitely also do that. But to watch mentors and watch my mentors and listen to my mentors' experience and to feel mentored by them provides me immense motivation, inspiration, because you truly have no idea what people's journeys have been like and how they've managed to get where they have, and people aren't really like willing to share that with you. And to have that relationship with somebody where they can provide you guidance and tell you what not to do, what to do, what would work best for you, and sort of just like be next to you, be a sounding board, can be tremendous. I think how can students seek out mentors? I would say this is just, Guillermo spoke about this earlier, but like people are actually very willing to help. I think there is a tendency to think that people really don't want to help young people, but people genuinely do. And I think just reaching out to somebody who you actually, connect with, whose work you treasure or you're passionate about, like learning from them and telling them that you want to learn from them can really pay dividends off. People are willing to help, people are willing to find you. Find a space for you within their sort of inner circle or outer circle to make sure that you can learn from them just by osmosis, just by being around people like this. You can, just by observing them, you can gain so much, just personally and also just professionally for your career.
So yeah, I completely agree with what both of you have said. Mentor, like I think it's very important to have like a proper guidance in the industry. It's very easy to be lost because it's a very vast industry, lots of people to follow. I think with the right kind of mentorship and guidance, you can actually have a proper sense of direction of what you want to do. So even where I work at, I have like producers and like senior producers that I very much like work closely with. Like I can see how they handle big projects and how they handle conflicts and how it is that they communicate with others. And I can always, I'm really inspired by the way they do that. And I kind of adapt that into my own working ethics, which I think has helped me a lot to be like a better kind of a production assistant, just to understand how they do their things and how it is done out there, how they manage things. And you can also always ask them questions, or maybe just shadowing them is also just, good enough sometimes. You can always, mentors, yeah, they always answer your questions. Like if you need any help at all, if you're stuck, if you have anything that you need more clarity on, you can always rely on your mentors, and it's very, very helpful uh, to really trust your mentors. And I think 101%. My advice again to students on seeking mentorship is again very much similar to what Vishnu said. There's no right answer on how you can find an ideal mentor. It's just like reaching out to people. Some may help you and some may not. It's just a very trial and error method. Like, but if you really, like Vishnu said, if you really want someone's help, I think when you reach out to them, they may respond, they may not. If they do not respond, you go for someone else. That's just how it is.
How important is it to have formal education or training in the industry, and what alternative paths could someone consider? Or could you give a background into your formal education and how is that, and how helpful that's been in your career?
Yeah, I would say it's important, but not super important, especially in TV and film. I think a lot of it is not traditional education, and it comes through experience. And the most important thing you can do, I think, at a young age is try to, PA, be a runner, be involved on projects and on sets or whatever, it may be, and just sort of getting that exposure and real world, yeah, exposure to the industry, and that can really be the best way to learn how different things work, because a lot of things in TV and film are not in textbooks or not going to be in classrooms. And I guess my background was not going to film school or TV school, and I just came from a business background, and um, it's not rocket science. So I think once you go into it, it's not easy to pick up, but it's not impossible to learn completely on the fly, and that's important to know as well. But I wouldn't negate the value of, getting a degree in TV or film. I'm sure it's very valuable in its own way. And I would say separately also just watching stuff and knowing what you're working in, and being able to watch other content and other competitors and learn from them, or watch old things. And I guess if you're working in film, watching movies and just getting inspired by different things, and that can really help you just form your own palette of what you know or don't know in TV and film, and that can really help you as you go older just be more fluent in understanding the industry.
Yeah, I actually agree with Guillermo. I would say it can be valuable, but it's not essential at all. I think that I did it specifically because I found myself in India feeling creatively stagnant specifically, and I wanted to go where I think the best TV shows that I was watching were being made. And I wanted essentially to learn from those specific people. And I found, I was privileged enough to sort of have that opportunity and to be able to access that opportunity. And I'm glad I was able to. But I don't think it's like I know many, many people who work in the industry and who didn't get a formal education and who do a fantastic job. And I think the alternative paths to consider are truly jumping in. Like there are people who jump in just off the bat and start gaining experience from an early age. And then also I think when I was quote unquote growing up, I think there were fewer resources on the internet. But there's like so many resources on the internet now. Like I think from Khan Academy, Pixar has their own courses out. You can essentially look up reels and reels of directors and archival stuff of how they directed things. There's BTS stuff. All scripts are like readily available. Studios now release them after a script is like Oscar nominated or not nominated even. So I think if someone isn't in film school, they can have access to a lot of reading resources and visual resources to figure out their own path of like gaining that experience. I think it's important to figure out what your film school is. Paul Thomas Anderson famously went to Tisch and then quit because he wasn't enjoying it and decided to like take money from his like father and just like make a short film. And he said, this short film will be my film school. And I'll do whatever I do with it and learn everything that I can from it. So I think finding what that film school looks like for you, or making your own film school, if that is not possible for you in a formal way, is just as valuable and will help you a lot.
Yeah, so I agree again with the two of you. It's not absolutely essential, but it can be helpful. Like even Tarantino has said, like you don't need to go to film schools to make films or anything. But like for me, it has actually massively helped getting an education. Like I did my undergraduation in visual communication, and I think that was my introduction to like the industry and where I met like-minded people, which was also very helpful. Like you come from a very formal education and then you go to a course like a creative course and you meet like-minded people, you have creative conversations, which really kind of like pushes you and like inspires you to explore more into the industry. So I'd say for me personally, getting a formal education has really helped me in gaining more clarity into what I want. It helps you, like you have your teachers there, and not just teachers, like I said, you have your peers that really help you. You see their works and see what they like, and you can, come together as a team and create stuff, and then you gain a lot more, when you get a formal education, when you're around people. I think it really helps into focusing on your career. After my undergraduation in visual communication, I also did like a production management for TV, film, and digital media in the UK. Again, massively helped me gain insights into the industry, meet people, meet professors, get an internship in BBC. So I think for me, yes, personally, it has helped. And I would, if you have the capacity and capability to attain a formal education, I would say, yeah, go for it. If you really think that this is the industry that you want to pursue in, I'd say go for it, and get a degree, get a multimedia or some sort of visual degree. I'm sure it will only do good, and it will not be a waste of time at all. So yeah, I would 100% say if you want to get a formal education, go for it. If not, you can still, like others have said, you can still make your way into the industry somehow.
Awesome. Can you discuss a project you worked on that significantly impacted your career and why it is important to you? Now, we had discussed the moment in your career, but now could you discuss a particular project, for example, in the job or career that you're doing right now?
Yeah, for sure. I working for my current job, I was the video producer or tape producer for the All-Star game for MLS in Spanish, but it was my first time in a truck, and to be given that role of tape producer was a big load and responsibility, and to do that was really for me a before and after in my career, and being able to go from more of the PA role and kind of doing things for people to working and having my own room and my own people to work with me. I think that was really a before and after, and I was really proud of being able to do a good job that weekend. And yeah, that's definitely for me a big moment. It was a success working on that show. We had a good pregame, postgame, halftime, and yeah, it was cool to be in a live truck. For a game like that of that caliber, of that level of viewership, and yeah, really exciting. So that was definitely the most exciting project I've worked on.
Um, a project that significantly impacted my career. I would say so 2 years ago, I was hired to write for a Netflix India original TV series called The Royals, which is going to come out at the end of this year or early next year. And I was still at Columbia doing my MFA when I got this opportunity, and I couldn't say no because it was a greenlit project and sort of felt unbelievable, truly, and continues to feel unbelievable, and has had a significant impact on my career because I essentially started out as an assistant on the project. I was just supposed to assist the head writer in developing the Bible. But once I was done, the head writer promoted me and asked me to be with her during the episode writing phase and offered me the opportunity to write an episode. And the episode was very well received by the producers on the show. And then I was eventually brought on board to write another episode and to co-write another episode with the head writer. So I ended up sort of not thinking this opportunity would ever pan out to having three writing credits on a Netflix TV show. And sort of besides sort of like what it means in terms of like a milestone in my career, I think it was enormously insightful. Like I learned how a TV show is made from scratch, which I have always wanted to know. It's like been my dream since I saw the first season of the OC, and I couldn't believe that I was getting to do it. And it has meant everything. It has just been hugely, hugely important on several levels.
For me, there are a couple of them, but I think the one that I mostly remember very significantly is the one that I worked on recently, which is we had a campaign for a giant retail supermarket called Aldi UK in the UK, based in the UK, and we're kind of their Olympic partner. So we had to do a couple of deliverables for Olympics, the latest Olympics. And so we partnered up with all of the Team GB, the Team Great Britain Olympians and Paralympians, and we did a number of deliverables, TikToks, Reels, and even TV ads. So I think, and I was assisting the senior producer on it. I think just being able to, be on a scale of production of that sort and just being with all of the athletes and the Paralympians, communicating with them, just setting up their mic and just interacting with them, the whole production, it was a very important thing for me. And I think what really validated that is the feedback we got after the campaign. We had really great viewership. Everybody was really happy with the campaign that we did. It was a great success. We had a lot of extra viewership and a lot of followers come in extra, and everybody thought it was very entertaining. And I think it was months and months of pre-production. Like there were a lot of athletes that we had to consider, a lot of ideas that we had to execute. So I think I was involved from like the pre-production to the very post-production, and I was very close with that project. So I think that is a very big milestone for me, and especially because it was a very successful campaign, I'd say yes, that's my answer.
Awesome experiences, guys. How do you keep up with industry trends and changes, and what resources do you find most helpful? And I know it's been mentioned of just engaging in media, but are there any other sorts of like ideas or any sort of ways that students or people can be immersed into what's going on?
Yeah, I think again to echo Vishnu's point, I think the internet is an amazing, as we all know, resource to learn things, and just being on the right social media platforms and following the right people, and just knowing what's going on at a very high level is okay. I think it's important to just know the basics of things, and you don't have to know every detail of every single thing, but just kind of knowing and being familiar with different companies, players, individuals as well, directors if you're into film and if you're into TV, production companies, etc. And like knowing, what exists and what doesn't, because that can help you later on if you're looking for a job or working with a company and looking for clients to know what exists and just sort of being aware. It's not, I don't think it's important to know every detail and be like a complete, TV film junkie knowing everything. It's obviously great if you can, but I think just knowing the basics can go a long way.
Yeah, I would say specifically there was like I think a newsletter that would come around in Colombia when I was in Colombia, and that sort of like took press links from Deadline or Variety or like even The Atlantic, or in kind of like long form journalism about like how the shape of the industry is shifting. There was so many articles that came out during COVID, and so many articles that came out during the writers' strike, and when people were talking about the advent of AI, and they continue to talk about it. So it's just like keeping track of them through news publications is helpful to like will be really, really helpful for you on the business side of things, which is separate from sort of like creatively engaging with work that's coming up, just like reading TV reviews or reading film reviews and sort of what's coming out and watching trailers. Separate from that, I think it's important to keep track of how your industry is shifting and shaping just from reading news articles from these publications about the industry.
Yeah, I think the same answer. I think it would very much depend on the kind of industry that you're interested in. If you're into the TV industry, then there's a bunch of production companies that you can refer to and keep track of. Again, if you're into like the film and documentary industry, again, there's a list of sources on the internet, especially that you can follow and keep track of. I used to, because I'm primarily into a lot of documentaries, I used to watch a lot of documentaries produced by, just even be Al Jazeera or anything like that. I think once you know what you're interested in, you need to research. Just go on the internet and research uh, production companies or any agencies that do that, and then just keep track of it. And what else? What else can I say? Yeah, that's pretty much it. Internet is your best resource for anything and everything now. So I think you have everything that you need on the internet. You just need to know what to look up.
What are some misconceptions about working in television and film that you wish more people understood, or that would give an incoming someone with hopes of joining the industry?
I mean, I think it depends who you are, but some people, may think on the outside it's, all flashy and Hollywood, etc. And it's not that way. And I think maybe not everyone thinks that way, but I do think like if you have that conception of it, it's not the case. And it's important to know that, again, we've said it 10 times today, but there's long hours, there's grueling schedules, there's intense work periods, and like just knowing that and knowing what you're going to sacrifice when you go into the industry, I think is really important. You go into broadcasting, you could be giving up holidays, you could be giving up, time with family, etc., because that's when you work. And I think just being fully aware of what you're in for and talking to people who work in the industry is really important, because maybe you can't commit yourself to certain things, and it's important to know that ahead of time before you're in the world. And that's, I think, a very important part that gets overlooked a lot, possibly, but I could be wrong, and it depends on the person, right? So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I think that a misconception that I would sort of deal with a lot was like the layman and the laywoman not having an idea of how much time it takes to make something. There is sort of continues to be confusion about that it took 8 hours to shoot a 1 minute ad, or how is it taking this much time for someone to write a movie? Like, why is it taking 7 years to make this big budget movie happen? And I think this is true for every industry. Like, we're not special. I think that when you sort of really focus in on any specific industry and people who do it right, you realize that it takes time and it takes money and it takes hard work and attention. And I wish that people understood that actual craft and actual attention goes into making things that they consume instantly. It takes forever to bring something to them.
I think for me, what I'd have to say is, in terms of my experience, one of the misconceptions that I had when I had to deal with what I had to deal with when I came to the industry was convincing my relatives and family that this is an actual job. Like, oh, you can have a career on the internet, or you can be a digital producer or like a TV producer. Initially, they used to ask me, "Is that a real job? Are you sure you will get paid well?" And I'm like, "Yes, this is. It has complete job security. It has full 9 to 5 hours or even more." So that's the one misconception that I had to convince my family that is not right. So I think, yeah, it is an industry that pays well, gives you job security, and yeah, that's what I have to say to add on to them.
We're running short on time, so we just ended off with one more question. What's one piece of advice you wish you had received when you were starting out that could help students today?
I would say, I've said it before, but be yourself. It's not, I think I knew that going in, but I think people often don't. And I think it's important to know that and just be yourself and follow what you think is best. And your gut feeling is often right about opportunities, about people, about jobs. And I think just being yourself at all times is the most important thing, because if you're not yourself, you can definitely I think you'll find more trouble long term if you're acting a certain way or trying to be somebody who you're not. And I think that's the most important thing, is really to just be your own person and go through every day, and don't be afraid about people when think about you. Obviously, don't be rude to people, and be kind, but don't be afraid about others' opinions, and like just be yourself at all times, and do that every day, and you'll be okay.
I think in this industry, because there aren't like clearly visible ladders of success. Like there isn't sort of like a streamlined order of things. Um, People can tend to be, and especially when I started out, and I could tend to be like, oh, this person's doing this thing, or this person has this opportunity. And like I'd be surrounded by a lot of people who were like looking around at what other people were doing and then figuring out what they should be doing. And I think I received advice, which was about a really, really lovely mentor in my life said to me, what's yours will never pass you by. And I found that to be hugely just like spiritually helpful. I think that it's important to know that this industry is vast. There are opportunities for everybody. You need to trust that opportunities that are for you are going to come for you if you work for them. And you don't need to compare your journey with somebody else's. Someone can very much do their own thing and be hugely successful, and you can be happy for them, and you can figure out what your thing is separate from them. And there isn't sort of there doesn't need to be this like competitive, like, oh, I need to get that thing that this other person has, or I think the thing that I have I don't value because this other person is doing this thing. Just stick with what you want to do. Just be consistent, be hardworking, and go after what you want to do, and don't look left or right. Just celebrate people around you. That's what I would say.
I think same for me. As I'm gonna be complete. This is gonna be a cliche, but like I would just say, don't give up. Like it's easy to feel demotivated or easy to actually give up in the industry because it's not an easy way up there. Like it's a very competitive field. Everybody wants to come into this and experience this. So you have to kind of you need to like stand out. It's a very competitive field, so it's easy to feel demotivated and give up. But I think if you truly have the passion and drive, and like if you really want to succeed in this industry, even if you experience like your low moments, like you just need to realize that it's normal and that you just really need to believe in yourself and just keep going forward, like everybody says. That's basic. That's all I have to say, really.
Thank you so much. We are at the end of our time, but thank you so much to our amazing panelists for spending the time today. Wonderful insight into the breadth of areas specialized in, what the key highlights are, as well as some things to watch out for in the realm of television and film. Thank you so much also to our viewers. I'm sure you can all agree that our amazing panelists have done a fantastic job and providing you crucial information to guide decision making around your next step. Once again, if you need any help with university and career guidance, do check out our website and Instagram. With that said, one last huge thank you to our panelists. Thank you so much all.